On the pod today, we have Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. How are you today?
Well, fighting the fight. It's good to be with you. Good to hear your voices.
Senator, what was it like in the room yesterday before the president stormed out, and were you able to get your hands on a Butterfinger?
Yes, he brought the candies. The problem is that our workers need paychecks. Candy does not solve this problem.
That's true.
But he was agitated. He was you could see when he walked in the room, he didn't want to be there. He actually admitted, he said, I don't want to be here. My staff made me be here. As I've said before, negotiating with President Trump is like negotiating with Jell-O. He states mistruths regularly. He'll say one thing that contradicts something he said 2 minutes earlier. He tries to talk over people and not listen. It's a surreal experience being there with him.
Senator, given the way that everything has gone to date in these, quote unquote negotiations with Trump, is there any possible deal that you could see that would open the government up short of the Republicans just folding?
Well, he has been so adamant, first about his $5.7 billion wall, and we're totally opposed to any wall at all, as Nancy made clear yesterday, and we've made clear over and over again. There's a lot of talk, let's do something on border security for DACA or for immigration. The problem is, been there, done that. Every time that we try to do this, and he initially says, well, he would be for it, the Ingrahams and the Coulters and the Limbaughs beat him up and call him Amnesty Donald or this Donald or that Donald, and he backs off. He's done it 3 times already. And so I don't think that is a fruitful way to go. I think we're just going to have to stay firm. And, you're seeing a nice number of Senate Republicans realize that the government ought to open. The American people seem to be on our side quite decisively. I saw one poll that said only 25% of Americans believe that Trump should shut down the government to get his wall. That means he's losing about a third of his base, if you assume it's about 35%. So I think if we hang tough, we can win this.
Do you see any scenario where Republicans in Congress might override Trump's potential veto to reopen the government?
Well, initially, McConnell put on the floor this, it was then more than 30 days. It expires February 8th, so it's about 30 days now. And it got unanimous support. My guess is if you went inside the heads of our 53 Republican senators, probably about 40 would say we ought to open up the government and negotiate. They know this is a loser for them. But as the past has shown, they're just so afraid to buck Donald Trump, given his success at backing candidates in Republican primaries, that even though they know it's bad for the country, even though they know it's bad for their party, they sort of stick with him. But there has been an erosion. Every day you hear 1 or 2 Republicans say that we ought to open up the government and then negotiate. I think the number who've done it publicly is 5 or 6, and there are 3 or 4 more who have said it privately. So I think it's moving in our direction, even with the Republicans.
Senator, this morning, President Trump sent a pretty clear signal that he is willing to invoke a national emergency to A, get his wall, and B, maybe find a way out of this mess he's found himself in. What's your reaction to that idea? And also, how would Senate Democrats respond if Trump were to go that path?
Okay, I'd say 2 things here. First, he can talk about it. I don't believe that it's legally sustainable. There was a really good op-ed, which I would commend to your readers, by Professor Ackerman from Yale Law School, which I think made it pretty clear that it will, of course, be challenged in court the minute he should do it by all kinds of different people. Standing is an issue here, so the more suits, the better. So I think legally it would be blocked, but Nancy and I have talked about it, and we work very closely together, as you know, and we'd look at any legislative way to stop it as well.
Are you committed to holding up all Senate business until the shutdown ends?
Well, as you know, we held up that first bill, which was called S1. They're going to make us vote on it again this afternoon. But we had close to every Democratic senator on the floor of the Senate at 10:30 this morning, where both Ben Cardin and Chris Van Hollen asked that McConnell put on the floor the 6 bills that would open up the government, the 8 cabinet departments that are not Homeland Security, and then a separate bill that would open up Homeland Security, and they blocked it. And we have said, hey, we will go forward on this bill if you let us have a vote on opening up the government, which I'm sure would pass and pass overwhelmingly, because then a lot of these Republicans I mentioned who are scared of Trump would be smoked out. And we're gonna look at every bill that comes forward very critically, and we're gonna look at each bill and decide what the right course is. We're continuing to stay strong on S1 here.
Are you surprised by Senator McConnell's essential absence from all of this, sort of deciding that he was going to abdicate all of his authority to Trump?
Well, he sort of in the past has bragged that he's the expert at avoiding shutdowns, that he's the great negotiator to avoid shutdowns, and now he's ducking. When the House was Republican, maybe, he said, well, we have to get President Trump to sign it. But 2 things have happened since then. The first is the House is Democratic, so they'll pass bills to open up the government, which was much harder. But second, in the Senate, we actually passed a proposal unanimously, not a single Republican dissented, that would require the government to stay open. So I think his arguments don't make much sense. And I said to him on the floor, he was objecting to us bringing up the open up the government bills. And I said, Leader McConnell, I have 3 words for you: open the government. And then I said, it's in your hands. And he had nothing to say. He knows he's stuck. He's stuck because his party is divided, with more of them still sticking with Trump than the number who have come with us. I also think he's looking home at politics in Kentucky, and you may remember 6 years ago, he had a pretty tough primary from someone who was to the right of him and a Trumpite. So I think he knows better, I'd say that, but I think at the same time, he's very reluctant to move forward. We need a bunch more Republican senators, and I would urge your listeners, particularly if they have a Republican senator in their home states, to email, to tweet, to call, to write. It's heartbreaking to see what he's doing. You asked about the meeting with him. One of the reasons Nancy and I go to these meetings is to speak the truth. He's in sort of this bubble. You can see it with the staff around him. No one tells him what's going on, the truth. So he likes to brag. All these workers are for shutting down the government for the wall. And I told him, I said, there are counties in upstate New York that you carried in 2016 and that I carried. Let me tell you what's happening. Farmers are really angry about your shutdown, Mr. President, because they can't get their farm loans, and they have to get them now because they need money for planting. I said, people, veterans and others can't get mortgages. I told him the story of a fire dispatcher, actually, who just bought a house. His wife is pregnant. They're being kicked out of their present accommodations in a month or 2, but because FHA can't sign the statement, they have nowhere to go. Yeah. And I said, don't be under the illusion that people like what you're doing. They don't. It's very bad for you. You should have seen his face. He doesn't hear things like that.
Yeah.
So, that's he's not winning this fight, I don't think in any part of the country.
So obviously the border is more secure, more militarized than at any time in history. You've said that, if the president is willing to open up the government, you would be willing to negotiate on border security. What, if any, additional security do you believe we need on the
our
southern
position
border?
is pretty clear. We're for doing basically what we did last year, which is 1.375 for no wall, but for ways to improve border security: drones, sensors, things at the port of entry that can detect drugs and fentanyl and all these other bad, terrible things that are coming in. So we're willing to do border security, but we don't believe the wall is the way to go. And our position, which has united our caucus and the House caucus, is go with last year's proposal, which got Democratic and Republican support, and that's what we proposed.
Senator Schumer, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you giving us the time.